Now call the Planning Commission meeting to order. All members are present. We have established quorum. If anyone plans to speak during today's commission meeting, I do need to administer an oath. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth to this commission? I do would suffice. Thank you. Again, we always ask that if you're going to talk during the meeting that you either come to the podium or sit at the table. They both are microphoned so that video and audio can be picked up. The first item on the agenda is case number 1102, Integrated Services at 10 Graham Drive. This is a Title 41 site plan review. It has been already brought forth a preliminary to this meeting, and I believe it was approved at one time, correct? This is a change.
This is a change, I think.
I don't think anything was ever approved. They did bring original plans.
Yeah.
Across the street was approved.
Yeah, the parking lot was approved. This is the sort of second component of it, the creation of 4 apartments. So I don't know who wanted to provide a summary of the project, if you're ready for one, Paulo, or if I also see the architect is here, so.
Well, I can begin talking on it. It's a 4-unit property, 4-unit residential on 11 Graham or 10 Graham Drive. It's zoned as B3. One of the challenges with B3 is that it does not permit residential on the first floor. The developers did request a variance from the Board of Zoning Appeals last month. That variance was denied. They had requested to have residential on the first floor, and because that variance was denied, they came back with what meets code, which is to have the building elevated so that the residential is on the second floor with this type of a unique structure. But it does meet the city codes for the definition of a floor, primary floor, secondary floor, etc. Other than that, it is, like I said, it's zoned B3. It is abutting a R2 district, single-land, 2-family units. The map I included with your site review on the 4th page represents that. And other than that, it has been reviewed by Athens City Code, Fire, Police, and Public Works to satisfy the requirements of Title 41 to verify that it meets the minimums of code. And you can feel free to read through that, but it does. One of the unique things relating to the parking, it will have to be registered as 2222s, John?
Yes. 2-bedroom per unit. It's a 4-unit building, so the maximum occupancy amount would be, if it was ever turned into a rental, would be 2 tenants per unit, or, as I think what their proposal is, there is no rule as to number of people per unit, as long as it's a family. They're all related.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so when you said that kind of throws me off. So really what you're talking about is you're really trying to go for families, but if need be, if it fell out of the use, it'd be...
We would be 2 parking spots shy if it was rental to unrelated people.
Okay. And then this, of course, everything's on the second floor.
Right.
And this is not in the floodplain whatsoever.
It is not.
Okay. Go ahead.
Is there any, I'm sorry, was there any parking underneath this structure then?
Not as of right now.
There's a mushroom farm. So everything is up on, is elevated. Do you have a central plan in
It's the second floor.
Second floor, this is the first floor. I'm interested in seeing the structure, the first floor. I look like second as well. It says first floor.
What's the elevation to from the, I guess, the ground grade to the bottom of the first floor?
It's going to be 9 feet.
9 feet.
We're planning on eventually possibly infilling it for commercial use.
Okay.
There's no need.
Okay.
9 feet sufficient?
It should, I was thinking, well, with 8-foot ceilings, it gives me, well, I'm going to have a fire-rated ceiling floor somewhere.
So, yeah.
So I've got 9 foot is plenty high for commercial use down there, we'll be feeding everything from below.
So what else we got? Okay, this is the footprints.
And I should just say too, the tree commission, they've already reviewed this site when we brought it through from the planning commission for the addition to Graham Avenue.
Floor. So in terms of the elevation, that first, not really the first floor, the, whatever you want to call it, the business section.
Correct.
The ground floor, okay, that's a good term.
Yeah.
It's pretty much open except for the center corridor where the bathrooms and the stairways will be. Is that what I'm seeing?
No,
No?
the stairways are going to be out in front of the walkways. If you look on the site plan, you'll see how we're getting entry into the front. Two different stairways.
Oh, that's the second floor, okay, that's, I see. I was looking at the second floor, sorry. That's my confusion. Okay, yes, I see.
One of the supporting structures will be insulated and heated to bring water and sewer.
I guess that's what I'm trying to picture is that ground floor core, what that looks like.
It's going to be as open as we can possibly make it
Okay.
right now. I mean, I envision a steel frame, columns and steel frame that would actually set this building on top of.
Okay. I was just trying to picture what we'll be looking at there.
So there won't be any type of utility facilities on the ground level.
Ping pong tables, recreation center?
We've timetable for what? For the infill?
Yeah, well, no, I think,
Ping pong table.
Covered playground.
Okay, yeah, that's true.
So you just run the utilities up some sort of, like, disguised like a column?
One of the
sort
columns or support posts will be enlarged.
Okay.
There will be a utility chase core.
Yeah, that's what you're...
That's what I was asking.
Yeah, it won't be that big though.
Right.
All I have to do is bring water, electric, and sewer, and if we're doing gas or not, I can't remember, whatever, into it.
Okay.
So what will be the total height of the structure?
Well, we still maintained, originally we were trying to do a nice low profile building to make it fit in the neighborhood. So the total height will be well under, I'm not sure exactly, but it'll be well under, what is it, 45 feet?
Yeah, he's gonna be about,
Another story.
Yeah. It's a B3.
And we're still making an effort to try to keep this contained, because it is surrounded by residential occupancies.
So it will be 3 stories total, ground, first and second.
2.5.
Well, it'll be 3 stories by the state line.
3 stories by split, appearance 2.5 is kind of,
The second story is going to be built within the attic space with dormers, essentially. The footprint of the second floor, third floor, is not nearly the same size as the floor below it. So we're trying to utilize that attic space for habitable, where it is habitable.
Makes sense.
So the eave height would have originally been approximately 12 foot off the ground on this one.
Do you have this up there?
Yes, we do.
They don't have this one, do they?
I don't have the first version, yes. I think I can keep the same.
Same thing.
Yeah. Except I'm still...
Yeah.
Did you like it?
Yeah. I see there. So just give you some legs. So underneath that, that's going to be a concrete pad all the way?
I was figuring gravel at this point in time. Depends on the budget.
Okay. I just wondered,
Yeah.
not
I don't want to pour a concrete pad there,
Scratch
because we would have to put utilities, et cetera, in if it ever did get upgraded.
Okay. Again, I was thinking more of entertainment like roller skating or skateboarding. Silly me, okay.
Because you mentioned a potential commercial use for the future, are there any ideas? Is this something?
Well, the number one idea would be Kevin, his operation is expanding a lot as we just added to his existing building, and the potential exists maybe for him to make this part of his service also
So
in
the
the future.
expansion of the integrated services.
You know, he can speak to that, I don't know.
And there's certain, these are, well, you know, we are a service business, and we are a public service business, and these are sort of volatile times and uncertain times. However, we're doing really well, and we're a web-based service business. That is to say, all of our people do home-based services, and they relate to this as a regional office. It is true that we had rapid growth recently and had to expand. It's a possibility, but it's not a plan. It's not something that we have. I'm more along the lines of the mayor, thinking of how we can use it for, you know, the people who are going to live there and that kind of stuff. But, so we don't have any current plans to do that. I will say that we're new developers of affordable housing. It certainly, leaving it open in a B3 area for possible use for that certainly doesn't hurt the value of the affordable housing, that's for sure. So in that sense, it's attractive to leave it. There are many things that's not optimum about not putting it on the ground level. That probably is long-term actually a good plan to leave it available for that kind of use. But we have no current plan.
More questions, comments?
Okay, a couple things just come to mind. One is that, again, I'm thinking, you know, use string hammocks under there, but then I think barbecues is not what you want. Well, no, and I guess the next question, you talk about future business use. If that were to turn into future to businesses, I guess this is a question more for John. Would the more parking be required for a business, or
Yes. And maybe what that they could put parking underneath as well for half of it and business for half. And it would depend on the use or type of business, what the required amount of parking spaces would be. But they may have enough, they may not, depending on how they wanted to do it. So, currently, no, there is not any on the proposed plan for what they may need, so they would have to figure something out.
Okay. Because the implication is if they went to a straight rental housing, they wouldn't have adequate parking for that.
If they went to straight rental housing, they would not, but again, could always add it underneath.
Just asking, again, future use.
I guess I just feel like we've had this in bits and pieces, you know, the expansion of integrated services across the street, and the needing for parking, establishing the parking lot first, and now we're to the residential unit. It just throws me for another loop if there's going to be a future commercial, and then you're stating now there's another parking possible, you know, issue that might be, just wanted to state that. So does that mean maybe not this year or in 2 years or what have you, and then we're looking at additional restrictions?
And I do see a letter from February 2nd there. It sounds like you just kind of slip a trail under there too if you need to, right? Is that what I'm reading as conditional use?
That's a conditional use, yeah, there's my letter, that trailers are permitted in the B3.
Fascinating.
Well, that's what was on it.
Yeah,
When we got it. It would straddle both lots.
I remember that.
They did get parking underneath the additional, wouldn't it, because of your
I
stairwell?
had a home died.
Drive around,
I thought so too, yeah. I don't think they
from the rear.
actually additionally anymore, trailers come in. At least that's what I think happens now.
Yeah, I guess I'm hearing, I mean, it sounds like the members aren't too excited about this sort of solution based on the Board of Zoning Appeals, denying of residential use on the ground level. Obviously, it doesn't seem like there's much alternative, though, too, and it doesn't also sound like you guys are that excited about in developing the lower half in the future. I mean, it doesn't sound, nothing's lined up, and it's, if something comes, great, but if not, that's another thing. So I wonder why, if the better direction would have been to try to get it rezoned back into the R2, since it's right on the edge there.
R2 is not going to meet, it's a 4-unit property.
Not R2, it's R2 that straddles though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right.
And to make it an R3 would be almost into the spot
Yeah.
zoning.
Obviously, raising the apartments up also puts an added challenge as far as handicap accessibility too, doesn't it?
Yeah, we just had the state, the funders is the Federal Home Loan Bank and the Department of Mental Health. And the Department of Mental Health, we were concerned about that. And we're doing this we're the owners, Integrated Services is the owners, but we're doing it in agreement with Metropolitan Housing where they're the operators. And they are not concerned about that so long as Keith, I may not say this the right way, so long as that we have sufficient access to affordable housing with wheelchair accessibility. It's not an issue for the funders, the state of Ohio. I just put it to you that way.
From the state of Ohio, also from the building department, of course, it's an issue as well. But for two reasons. I've appealed these issues before. Number one, the city's denied us the ability to put it on the ground floor. And two, the availability of accessible housing through Keith's other properties within a region, a local area will more than likely satisfy them as well.
I get in trouble for talking too much, so you're probably nervous. We want to develop affordable housing for people long-term throughout the region, including in Athens. To me, the way I think of it, well, it's not like we're going to have a hard time finding people to live in these units. I don't have any sense of that. The demand is so incredibly huge for families, especially for families, that these will be the first units of their kind in Athens County. That, in my mind, trying to do the right thing by people and by communities, I got it in my mind that, okay, that one, for all these reasons, we're going to have to build it this way. The next one up, I'm learning from this process. We would have to make sure that the next one was on flat ground and have it wheelchair accessible, because it's not like it's not an issue. It's just that this is the first one. We're working in partnership with Keith, and he's got ample access to wheelchair accessible stuff. Next time, you guys can't take my word on this, but I'm just giving you this information. Next time up, we definitely will have to do one that's wheelchair accessible, just in the course of planning. But on this one, we'll.
I think it's not even a matter of just handicap accessibility, but I think in terms of age, obviously your residents who might be 65 and older,
Yes.
have a little bit more challenging time with stairs. So, you're not, it's not just a matter of the handicap, it's also a matter of possibly age that gets involved in that,
Well,
as far as
that's why I use
limitations.
the word flat ground, flatness is the
Yeah.
issue, age, whatever. Yeah, exactly, absolutely.
Was there ever a discussion of bringing this in as a PUD? Planning of development? No?
We had touched on it, but they thought this was the easiest route in this situation. At least that's my understanding. It meets code as is, so
Yeah, it does.
from a developer standpoint, we frequently get criticism that the PUD process is extremely cumbersome with no guarantee of approval, and it's significantly more cost-intensive up front for the detail that you have to provide on plans. John and I hear that criticism weekly, if not daily, so. If you're doing an affordable housing project, adding that cost up front with the risk of getting denied is a real risk, so.
Yeah, I was just trying to look at a way of dealing with the need for that variance for the ground floor residential.
Did you state you're awaiting a response on an appeal, John?
I'm sorry.
Did you state you're awaiting a response on
No,
an appeal?
I have not submitted yet.
Oh, but you will need to submit an appeal.
As soon as, we have to clear I go through all the local stuff first before I go
Okay.
complete the drawings.
They also could potentially take this back to the Board of Zoning Appeals and request what's called a substitution, as opposed to a variance, and a substitution is a substitution for something less objectionable is the way to do it, even though this does meet code. They could basically go back to the BZA, ask for the same project that they requested previously, but it's a substitution as opposed to a variance. So there is an opportunity for that if they would choose to make that.
To go back to the one-floor plan, the
Yes.
original concept.
Right, as a
Well, not one
substitution.
floor, for
Paul, I think John's appeal that he's talking about is with the State Ohio Building Department, not through the court system, correct?
Not with
Paul?
the state.
Right, that was my
Okay,
understanding.
okay.
I just wondered if that was weighed
Okay.
on, but I hear what he's saying. He wouldn't submit it until I has approval locally.
And I suspect the substitution may be a little bit more difficult for zoning board of appeals, mostly because really, again, this is conforming to all the code. A substitution would be really substituting it for something that requires a variance. I mean,
Yeah, I'm not an expert on how that part of it works.
and again, substitution is not my expert, because most of the time we were looking at variances. Okay. And Keith, what's the waiting list on your housing these days? I guess that's a question I had.
We're running around about 500 families.
Okay. That's what I thought.
And we just got the homeless documentation in from the last point in time count. We had 366 respondents to the homelessness, and we had 35 singles that were homeless. We have 172 in permanent housing, 147 in temporary housing, and 48 that meet the HUD homeless definition in Athens County.
Okay.
Can I understand the process a little bit more as far as does Metropolitan Housing assign people to these apartments, or it's
That
just...
will be integrated services. This is shelter plus care housing. So we've applied for subsidy through U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. It'll be project-based, meaning the subsidy stays with the unit, not the tenants. As long as the tenant lives there, they'll be subsidized. When they move out, they become unsubsidized because it doesn't go with them, it stays with the unit. Kevin, the only eligibility we'll determine is their background, history, whether they're accepted within the program and their income eligibility. Kevin will be doing all the other stuff for them to come into the unit.
So you're doing the housing management, really? Right, so
Yeah,
that's
we'll
what
manage
cities-
and operate the units.
Okay.
We'll collect all the rents, maintain the leases, maintain the project files, work with the other city crews with any issues that happen in the building itself.
But basically, you would be advertising that the housing was available, or, that's what I'm trying to understand is...
It's, well, through processes like this, the constant identification of families who would be eligible and who are known to us, we wouldn't need to advertise.
Right.
We would have readily available appropriate referrals.
Yeah,
The big thing is...
So I guess I'm asking is, like, can you work with him in terms of the handicap accessibility?
Oh, yeah.
Can you switch around to, to where...
We already do all that. We
Do you already do that?
supporting
So, okay.
organizations anyway, that's...
These guys are, he's a remarkable Metropolitan Housing Authority. I'm not just saying that because he's sitting next to me. He's my partner on this for a reason. They try as hard as they can to do the right thing by everybody who comes to them. And that's not a given in these rural counties by any stretch of the imagination. So we have, not just with Keith, but he just came from a community-wide meeting that does nothing but think about accessibility to affordable housing and preventing homelessness and all that kind of stuff. So that's our community network. It's not just us two, as Keith said, it's lots of other people.
Referrals will be coming in from all the organizations that could be Good Works.
Oh, absolutely.
My sister's
I'm
place.
assuming you're full right now, you're at capacity now.
Yes.
So if someone came in, again, a handicap situation and an advanced age situation, would you just transfer somebody from one apartment to one of these?
If the individual living in a unit doesn't require that type of unit, we don't leave them set empty until we find somebody, because time goes by, we fill them, but they know very well when they go in that unit that they may have to be transferred out of there when we come across a client like that.
It's constant torque on a overwhelming demand on a limited system, so it's constant management, just trying to do the right thing all the time. What you said?
Yeah, we only operate one 5-unit project base that stays full all the time. We have a tenant-based program that's always over capacity for this sort of housing on there. And Kevin is right, it is the very first, the difference here than others that comes out is, this is permanent housing with services attached to it. That's not been done in southeastern Ohio in this area that I'm aware of. This is really going to be the first supportive permanent housing project in Athens County.
Okay.
Are there comments, questions?
I mean, to speak to, and so that's a good background for your incremental, I'm not sure exactly what the concern is, but I can kind of get a feel for where it would be. Is this thing where's it headed? In terms of us doing that one, well, here's the dynamic around this housing stuff. Cleveland and Franklin County get everything, and we don't get squat because well, there are two reasons really. They want big stuff, and we have to do little stuff because we have small communities. And the second thing is to get these kind of partnerships together, whereas like his counterpart in Franklin County runs this giant, operation with all these aspects to it. And really, to be able to attract this funding, it is because of there are many things. Hocking Valley Bank was very supportive, and the local Adam Board was very supportive. But, the key partnership is with the really good Metropolitan Housing Authority that really is seriously taken on the challenge of homelessness and as it relates to affordable housing. Yeah, that's what I would. And so the growth was not exactly planned for, but it was more of a yearning, and these opportunities just opened up, a yearning for better housing for the people that we serve, that we're already serving. I don't know if that makes sense.
Can this project be approved at this level and to go back as a substitute later on if, or something of that nature, if they wanted to do something regarding housing on the first level?
They'd have to get a variance.
No, they can take this project, if it's approved, as Paul was explaining, and go back to the PZA for a substitution of less objectionable use. They could not add more beds if that's what you're asking, because they would not have the parking, but they can go back to the Board of Zoning Appeals and basically put the two pictures in front of them.
But this project as it is right now,
Well, they would say this is the substitution for
Correct.
this one that is approved.
Correct.
Right.
And the distance is some 9 feet at least.
and they'd have to do a variance though for this level if they wanted to add a couple more apartments or something of that nature.
Well, they can't, they just don't
can't.
have the parking.
Okay. Well, if they did half and half though?
Underneath,
Yeah, underneath.
could possibly, I don't know. Yeah, they'd have to come back at us.
No, I don't want to belabor the handicapped accessibility, and I understand where that is. And I'm all about scattered site housing as opposed to one big complex where we put everybody together and how detrimental that can be. and this is way off base, but I'm wondering, and Keith, we've had this recently, a tenant may say, I need accommodation. How will you address that? They may not have needed an accommodation when they first went into the unit, but they'll
In
come
terms of
back.
wheelchair accessibility, or age, ambulation, something.
Well, under that...
Because the fact it's tenant-based and it's project-based?
It's project-based, but still, when somebody asks for reasonable accommodation, the property owner is not subject to having to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to make it reasonable. That's why it's called a reasonable accommodation. If it's not reasonable for the owner to make that accessible, then there's nothing that says he has to do that, because it would be unreasonable for him to have to put in an elevator or, any other source that's going to cost that much money for being able to do that. What the reasonable accommodation we would try to meet with them is offering them another place to live that meets what the accommodation request is they have.
Okay, that's good.
Other comments? Well, I mean, I think you can definitely see that we're interested in trying, hoping that the substitution would be accepted. I mean, we'd love to see it on the ground level as opposed to the other alternative. But with that said, we have sort of limited sway when it comes to if it's already mostly accommodating the current code, which you have, and the use isn't something that we're in disagreement with for that zone, then we generally should move to have it approved. But again, I don't know if we could put some, what was that?
Is it sprinkled?
It will have to be.
Yeah, for that number of
Fire
units.
suppression?
Well, that or fire separation on a 2-hour wall or whatever.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. Well, and I believe the architect had mentioned it did previously go in front of the tree commission, so it won't need to go.
I made comment to that, so I'll verify that
I couldn't-
everything's okay, but yes, it did previously go. And there are some
Oh, I see. I'm
parking
sorry.
issues
Shade,
as
correct.
well with the eating and such that will need to be altered and changed from what they originally did. And it's noted on here.
We must have had them deed more parking spaces than they needed for a level.
No, what they did is put in another curb cut across the street for, a curb cut application will have to be made for new parking space at 11 Graham. And that's where, so they ended up putting more parking on their side of the street than what was originally submitted to us.
Across the street at
Yes.
Integrated Services.
Yes.
I see. It's right here on the plan, if you want.
Again, we're still in the B3 zone too.
And let's see, a comment on that curb cut from city engineer. Is it on the plans? Right, is that right? It's
On
separate.
the one they did across the street.
Right.
Well, that wouldn't necessarily be germane to
Right.
the review for this project specific. As far as, it was an oversight on Andy's part, I imagine.
Right, we're just reviewing the 10 gram as opposed to 11 gram, like the previous one. Here you are, Jay. Any additional comments, questions?
Just in terms of if something ever long-term, as far as the shared parking, if that was going to be an issue, as far as parking being across the street, if that property would be sold or something of that nature, then it would obviously have to fit a different...
It's deeded, the parking spaces at the site we're talking about at 10 Graham, 6 of those spaces will be deeded to across the street.
Okay.
So, and that would carry with any land transfer.
This project also has a 40-year commitment to it.
40?
40-year commitment affordability commitment requirements as part of the grants. So in reality, for 40 years, it's probably going to remain what it is.
Well, and what I like about the project is that, families are able to live in there, that, you have people of low income who have more accessibility to schools, more accessibility to shopping, things of that nature than a lot of people currently have in Athens County. So, employment.
Community center.
Absolutely.
Buses, yeah.
So, I would have preferred to see the first project go through for you, but, as it is, and really looking at community need, I think that it's a worthwhile project to approve.
Is that a motion?
I guess I'm going to make a motion.
Did you need a second on that, or did you just do it?
I will second it. I just have, go ahead. Sorry.
Do you
No,
need to include the city review as conditions?
We always do, yeah.
Yeah, has to do that.
All right, so the motion would be, to be honest, I don't know how to word this, but I'd like to see that, we'd still like them to pursue the appeal.
The substitution.
Yeah, the substitution, yeah. Now, again,
Letter of support.
Yeah, I mean, it might
I don't know
be-
if I put it in your actual statement, to just write a letter of support to them, and if they decide to take that back, that's probably the best thing. I don't know if you want it actually documented on.
it might be, that's a good suggestion, John.
That would be good.
Yeah. So that's a separate motion, that we write a letter of endorsement for the Plan A, or the granting a variance for it,
So I don't know.
and choose them if they want to pursue it or not. I assume, sounds like a better mix, really.
Right, right.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
We would still be granting approval for
But we're only granting approval again for this, the only one that they completely provided the final submittal on Title 41, which would be the one where it's raised.
Right.
So we can't really grant approval for something they did not submit fully. So if all those are, if there's been a second motion, all those in favor of approving the Title 41 site plan review, again, it's the one where it is raised, and also accepting the conditions of the staff review, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, it's unanimous.
Work cut out for you now.
Yeah, Paul just brings up a good point. If they do request a substitution to go to the BZA, then they would probably still have to come back here again for just kind of a change to the Title 41.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll see you again.
Just, yeah. Mr. Valentroy, just make sure you save these plans then, so you don't have to do them all over again.
Okay.
Is this your disc, or is this was...
I don't know why.
Was this your,
It's an open communication,
Pardon me?
open communication.
Open.
You mean opportunity for citizens to speak or communications?
At the time that the agenda was made, we weren't sure if Mr. Klein was going to be able to attend or not, so he's just coming as a communication. Is that the question?
yeah, the communication as item 3 or item 5 for opportunity for citizens to speak, we're just...
I would put him in as a communication,
That's
item
fine.
3, and I would
Okay.
have him go first, just for the sake of his lunch hour.
It would be the courteous thing to do. Mr. Klein, if you'd like to come to the podium or the table, we'll open up a communications section of our agenda.
Yes, been coming at this since March of 2008. Same plan, same idea, just getting all the parts and pieces together for you today. I have gotten my 7 copies here of the site plan and the elevations of the buildings, PDF. I've submitted my application to the code office, paid my fees, and as Paul said, it is cumbersome. But I'm doing it slow and careful, and hopefully satisfying this board and myself as well. So hopefully we can move forward here in this next year. And that is my plan, that we get all this put together and hopefully approved to where I can start on the construction of this property and be finished with it June of 2012. So less than, or a little better than a year from now, really. So.
Okay. And this is the property off of Richland Avenue, correct?
That's right behind C&E grocery store.
Okay.
Hickory Street, is it?
Hickory Street.
Okay.
Still 3 duplexes, 2 bedrooms each.
Okay.
So basically 2,000 square foot units. I own 3 and plus properties there.
Right.
Tore down one of the houses, so essentially not putting back anything more that couldn't be there by individual housing.
Right.
So just a different configuration. So would you like to see what's our next step here? You want to see this?
Sure. And this, you said you submitted this to the city, to Paul Rogue or John Paskey?
Yes, just last week I submitted, but
You still need time for everybody to...
Staff review, that's what, yeah.
Tell us about it. Just park in front of Nicholas here, I guess.
you want another copy? Sure.
Yeah, it sounds good. Have it one over there, one over there. Since you have so many.
Okay, the top copy there you're seeing is the same that we've had all the way from the beginning, is using the existing parking lot and the 3 units, which are facing each other to create kind of a courtyard situation. And then to the left there, you see all the utility schematics and things in that one. And we put the lot lines in so you can see there is a half lot. If you're looking at the top of the parking lot, it's on a lot and a half, and then the other 2 buildings are on 1 lot, and then there's a small section there, and then the 3rd lot.
Is this small section a right-of-way, or is that part of the additional sort of property?
It's just an additional part of the property. There's no utilities or anything going through there. So, and as you're looking at this, to the right is lots of trees. It's still the woods. That would be the buffer from the residential area above, up on, I think it's Lamar. And then the second page is the actual structures, 2 bedrooms. The last time I met with you all, seemed to be in favor of the project. Some of the things that were not looked into at the time were utilities. And I got a discovery that was kind of disheartening to me, and that is there's a 1-inch copper water line running in front of this property.
As good as anyone has.
Just a half.
Right. So back in 2008, I actually had plans approved by the city code office that I was going to build a 2-bedroom house on this very first lot that I owned. I don't know if the water supply would have been adequate for an additional house being built there. So that's been very disheartening to me. I have worked with Andy Stone. We've gotten some bids and some agreement that it looks as though for me to move forward, unless anyone can see any other way of doing this, I'm going to be paying for a 6-inch water line to get to this property along with the city to get there. I've gotten a letter from Andy Stone that states that. The $20,000 will be the cap of what I would pay in order to get it here. And in order for me to agree to that, obviously would be for this to be approved first. I'm not going to do anything about the water line until I know for sure that I'm doing something at the end of the water line. Because Mrs. Klein's not very happy that we're paying for a water line that 3 other people afterwards are going to be using as well. That's my concern too, but that's part of doing a development, is my understanding. But
So it's the water line on Hickory that's only 1 inch?
Yes.
Probably that branch of it. I suspect if it goes the other direction, it's probably coming down.
Yeah, it would have to be, yeah.
It would have to go clear down behind the fire department to get into a 12-inch water main at that point and come up or run along Hickory Street to get to the property.
That implies there's no fire hydrant on your end of the street, doesn't it?
Correct.
That's one of the
Yeah,
reasons.
it's at the
why
other
we're
corner,
upgrading.
yes.
Okay.
There is a property right at this point, yeah, as you're looking at the properties. So just above, like where the RVC is, there is a house right around that corner. That is the Tim Grounds, who lives on that corner. That's the corner of Hickory and Canterbury. The opposite corner has the fire hydrant over on the other side.
Okay. Let's see, here we go, 20 feet equals 1 inch. So it's probably within 1,000 feet, easy.
Oh, yes.
Wouldn't hurt to have one further down.
I think they're required.
They're going to request, if I'm reading through Andy's notes, that they're, and I think Creek Troxel talked about this too.
Oh, I've already been to see him as well. and that
At
was-
the end of the run, there'll end
Yes.
up being a fire hydrant on the new line put in.
Part of that out cost us.
I mean, I'd certainly like to see, greater help in that regard, because there needs to be a fire hydrant there for the current residents. I mean, if I were to pull back and just build a separate house on each one of these, I don't want to come through the back door and do some kind of underhanded thing, but I could build a separate house on each one of those and really ask for the city to provide me with the services, correct?
Good question. I guess we could give you that 1 inch line. But I'm probably not, I don't know. Good question. Okay.
I have to ask the parking question again.
Yes.
This is greater than the need, the 10 spaces, correct?
There's actually 12. There's-
12.
Okay, well,
What do we need?
12.
Yes.
He's got two underneath coming off of Hickory, going into that garage area underneath.
One unit would have a garage under it because of where it's the unit closest to the street. This would actually have 2 parking spaces there because it would be a garage unit under that.
Yeah, if you look at some of the numbers, these are duplexes, there are 2 bedrooms in each.
And actually, the parking lot that exists, I could go back a little further back on the property, as you can see, where there's the 4 spots near the, what I call the rear of the lot. We could go back that way a little further and turn the parking spots the other way. I mean, it could be expanded. I mean, there's plenty of room for it, but the existing parking lot, the configuration to make it safe for navigating, pulling into a spot and backing out and all that, really allows for about the 10 spots.
Okay.
But 2 more could be picked up by the parking under, unit 2, as I would call it, or even coming in to parking at this bottom unit. 2 parking spots there to make it closer for them as well. So we could have up to 14 spots, I guess, on the property.
If I remember correctly, there was not a lot of talk of excavations, so this is a toe of a hill, technically. You're not going, everything that's pretty much done in terms of carving out that area?
Yes.
Is pretty much
Yes.
done?
In fact, the unit that's here with the garage would go back pretty much where there is a void right now, where the existing garage was taken down. We'll put it at that same elevation.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's not going to be stripped out into the hills now. I don't want to do that because you can certainly see some future problems, but especially with the last month of rains and all that, what could happen.
Yeah.
But no, there would not be any disturbance to the footprint as far as going back into the hillside farther, taking down trees, no. It fits within the open property right now.
Okay. Again, that was part of my concern, that when you start talking about extra parking, I said, yeah, you can put parking back there, just keep carving out that hill.
Oh, no, well, it wouldn't even take carving out back there. It's pretty much just, it hasn't been paved. There's room to go back just a little bit more. but-
Okay.
I am not asking for you to provide additional parking beyond what is
Okay.
required.
Actually, she thought you had too much parking, up till we got the numbers straight.
Simple math, sorry.
And then these little squares at the corners of the rear of the each unit, or I guess each building, they're little fences, I guess. Is that right?
Actually, I think what the architect drew there was the corner of each structure. It's actually like a patio, I think is what he's drawing there, but that was his idea, not mine.
It's not a criticism or anything, just a question. Just read what's on it.
Okay, I see, because it says, there's a little, on this page 1A, it says something about the side elevation, it says fence
Yeah, it's
beyond. I guess
a fence patio.
okay. And then, somewhere along the line, since...
Okay. All right.
Interesting.
That would be around the patio, is what they're saying.
Well, would there be a problem with the fence out in the hickories, what I'm wondering?
This front part right here. This is a...
That would probably be a variance if you...
It's a PUD, so setbacks are not an issue.
I really don't want to do fences. I guess I didn't catch that.
I mean, it's not, I guess it's facing the back of house of the hardware and grocery store, so I don't know if it really needs to, they may want this is privacy, I would think, if that's there.
It's very private for 3 of them for sure. The other 3, maybe not so much, but I would like to put a fence on the property line though at this lower level, just because of what is abutting my property there as far as the look.
I think that's what you were
Are
talking
you talking about the southern side or
Yes.
Yeah, that,
The western, this.
southern side? Since we're discussing PUDs, preliminary, so there's got to be more details put into place eventually. One of the concerns that comes up occasionally, of course, is solid waste and garbage and dumpsters and garbage cans. Do you have a picture of where those would end up on this?
That would be down at the street level behind the center unit. There would be a dumpster at that point. And it would be fenced in, to buffer but right there with all the C&E stuff that's in the back of there.
I know, that's what I was thinking, it's got to be an improvement.
I mean, there'll be an improvement, it'll look better, believe me. I've been up through there a number of times. I'll have a semi sitting there on days, it comes in on Tuesdays and sits there for long periods of time that these tenants will have to put up with. So, I appreciate your understanding of that it will be better and it will conform.
Okay. I just wanted to bring that up as one of the things that gets thought about at the last minute, that's all.
Well, I like this project, I liked it before.
I like it, I like the project.
I guess we're giving you a nod on that. Is that, I move that we give, this is a preliminary anyway, right?
Yeah, we just want to sense our feelings before you go further, but yeah.
Because
Yeah, we don't have to approve
it
that.
already. That's what I'm trying to decide. I mean, the water line and the money I put into it so far, I'm thinking, would I have been better off just to stick with the single units I was going to do? But I'm still passionate about this project.
Well, this looks like it would be a good turn. Good.
Don, we've talked, I think, before about how older parts of town might be revised, rehabilitated, and, I think this is a nice template.
Just get everybody on board to do it.
All right, any other comment? Well, I guess we would expect to see a staff review probably by the next meeting, you
No.
think, or is that...
More information.
Well, it depends on his timeline, but okay. I'll double check. I think what he's gonna have to do is probably come for more documentation at the next planning commission, which is actually 3 weeks.
Okay.
At some point, we have to do a public hearing. Now, it's possible, based upon Mr. Klein's timeline, I'll double check the requirements, but he may be able to do a public hearing in 3 weeks, because there's 14-day public notice. So if we can get if he wants to move forward that fast, I'll double check with our regulations, but we may be able to get it the notice in next week's Messenger, and then 2 weeks after that, have the public hearing, and then provide more detail. We'd have to get our site plan, our documentation in. Now, he has applied and paid his permits, et cetera, so that process is in. And this is, to me, it's a good indication that he should start investing more to get the more detail into us.
Okay.
Is that a reasonable assumption?
Yes.
Okay.
And I'm not on that aggressive of a timeline, but if we can do that, we might as well. It's all about timing when these are finished, as far as occupancy and having mortgages to pay.
Is it 2 years? What is it, once you receive approval for the planning?
He was saying next year, or June of 2012.
My finish date my expectations would be somewhere around May 2012. So about
PUD.
14 months.
5 years, isn't it?
5? Really?
PUD.
Okay.
But my thoughts are within the next 14 months to have the project completed.
Done within,
Completed.
have to have broken ground within 2, I think.
1 year to get your permits and then another year to be started, and 5 years to be completed.
Okay, that's what I was thinking.
Okay. And I'll-
Well, I guess I wasn't meaning to, I don't think we were meaning to imply.
They have houses right up in here, right?
Place you under certain time restrictions other than
This is a pretty direct, the house.
using the planner so as best guidance for, based on your time frames.
Yeah,
There is the council hearings.
Well, I kind of slowed the wheels turning down when I
There should be a house.
choked on the water line issue back in October, and I spoke with Andy, so that came about when the holidays kind of got distracted, and now it's like, okay, I got to wait another year in order for it to fit my life's timeline. So it would have fit if I could have had approvals done by now and starting construction right now, so I could be finished with them around, May, June, but that's not going to work for this year. I'll really be pushing it. I don't want to do it that quickly. I'd rather go another year and do it right and finish it the right way, so we've got some time, but if, moving forward over the next, 30, 40 days with some of this, then let's just do it. And I'll kind of sit on the permit and moving forward with planning.
Okay, any other comments, questions? Thank you, Mr. Klein.
Thank you again.
Good luck to you.
Do you want to take all those?
Yes, these are all for your department as well as the copies along with the...
For preliminary?
Yes. Thanks.
Should do
Talk maybe after this, in order to get where I'm to go.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it.
No problem. I'm happy to see it's worked out here
Before, yeah. Okay.
One is fine.
All right.
Nice
we
seeing you all
will-
again. I'll be back.
Okay. Good to see you.
Okay, moving along, communications, we had a number of items listed here. I don't plan on covering most of them due to the time restraints. I think what we want to keep hot, at least, is the sweepstakes/internet cafe discussion as we move towards the public hearing on that item. I wanted to also, I guess let's just talk about a few of these items first. So parking regulations, I hope we can maybe table that for once we get into the overall parking. It is pretty far along, and it's sort of the low-hanging fruit of our parking requirements, since it's already suggested regulations. The communication towers, Paul had provided us with the sort of model code that we had discussed at the last meeting.
I haven't had a chance to work on it anymore. If you guys want it, I did print out the relevant minutes from December 1st, which is when you guys had it up for discussion. If you want those copies for your records, I'm planning to following your recommendations and your comments from December 1st, get all that back to you at the next planning commission meeting.
Okay.
But if you want these, I'll distribute them right now.
Okay, that'd be fine. And that sounds good, that we'll just hold off till that is provided. I think a lot of it was about height and sort of the locationality of them, so, not co-location. The other item that we had on, that you'd like to see us getting back into again is the sign ordinance. We'll have to touch on that pretty quickly. We do have this sort of second set of task force recommendations, and John Paskey can kind of lead us in discussion on that when we cover it. So for today, Internet Sweepstakes Cafe, if we could just briefly touch on that item. Again, I think it provided with your agendas was the changes to the zoning code. A lot of this was a reflection of the other sort of vice zoning, which was the sexually oriented businesses regulation.
I've got a little bit on that, too.
Okay. And I know the one change we had kind of requested was the also including a distance between a sexually oriented business and a sweepstake internet cafe. Thank you.
Those are the minutes from February 17.
Same map or different map?
I've done new ones.
Okay.
New and improved. From the minutes, that there was a discussion as to whether, the recommendations I had were 1,000 feet, and you guys had asked to see what it would look like if we did 1,500 feet, and so I included two new maps, one that shows 1,000 feet, that's anything in gray is 1,000 feet radii on the first one, and the same with the second one, that's 1,500 feet, so you can see that there's some slight differences as you expand out.
And then zoning buffer is just if it's not allowed in that zone.
Correct. Now,
And then
based on the recommendations, if you're looking at either one of these, when you see the zoning colors, the only two colors where it would be permitted is the brown and the purple. So,
It doesn't seem like that buffer really does too much, maybe a little bit on the expansion of the buffer, I should say, by that manufacturing sort of area
yeah,
along
it doesn't,
East State Street.
it's not going to do too much.
No, it doesn't.
It does crowd out a little bit more on the far east side. Those jagged areas where you see that purple, that's
Right.
essentially the river. It's a part of the parcel, and it's zoned manufacturing, but that's the Hocking River right there. It does rule out almost everything on Columbus Road, a little bit more than in the past, in the 1,000 foot, and
Yeah.
also that area on West Union.
It seems like West Union's the biggest impact.
Yeah.
So we would be allowing riverboat gambling.
Yeah, do we need an open space,
on the
or an education buffer? Is that E1 or E?
That's only the ridges.
Yeah, that's the Regis lands, and that would be permitted by the university, or
Could be educational.
OU land.
So while looking at this, it takes off that portion off of Dairy Lane and below that,
When it goes to 1,000.
when it goes to
1,500.
1,500. Yep, it takes that one out.
Yes, it does, that's correct.
A little more, a little less than this.
And everything on the south side was already covered, which is why I cut it off.
UE, isn't it?
It's allowed here. And
That's on the other side of the river.
what's the route again for that?
That's the Regis Educational Institution.
The 1,500 disappears.
It almost eliminates that Columbus Road, just about.
Yeah.
It's tiny.
Yeah.
But would that make it more restrictive than our sexually
Yeah,
oriented?
'cause that's only
It'd be
1,000.
more restrictive by 500 feet.
Okay.
Plus, you'd also get into, if you want to do restrictions by, one of the other recommendations was the 1,000 feet from any sexually oriented business. If you have one right there, that might
Then it also creates a buffer.
completely invalidate it, so.
They always said it can't be in a floodplain too, and that even restricted more.
Or a hillside.
Hey, you don't want to write those into that. You know?
Not that I'm, championing this or anything, but I would be concerned if we put that restriction, the separation from these adult-oriented businesses, and this pretty much just about eliminates.
But that's okay, as long as there's at least one parcel for each.
Yeah, but if you had two of the same thing built in the two areas that works, then you have eliminated the other one, kind of.
So whoever gets there first.
Yeah, well, and I guess if we're trying to restrict it, I don't think we're also trying to make sure that we can have two, like, I wouldn't want to look at it that way, where we're trying to restrict it, but at the same time trying to find two spots that two separate businesses can compete against each other. Like, we don't want to create an environment of competition, so, I don't know. So, I guess I probably could see the merit of keeping it the same as whatever the sexually oriented business, the 1,000. I think, did we suggest 1,000? I thought it was 500 feet from the, if I look at it, it's covered in item,
Can you ramp the sexually oriented to up to 1,500?
The first page, there's 1,000 right there, something.
Yeah, I think that's 1,000 feet of a landmark or historic district within 500, An internet cafe, sweepstakes, business lawfully operating as a conforming use is not rendered a non-conforming use by the subsequent location of a church, public, private, school, residential, public park, or library within 1,000 feet, or landmark or historic district within 500 feet of the internet cafe. So that's after a new church or something goes in, correct?
Where are you looking at?
I'm sorry, Paul, I'm looking at 23047J. separate from that.
This is where it starts right there. First
Okay.
What you provided us on the back there.
Okay, thank you.
That is a non-conformity, which comes in first,
Right,
church or
right.
cafe. Where the section you're talking about is that they...
Yeah, we were just suggesting that, yeah, I see. So it would be, we were going to add an item 7 on that first page to also list sexually oriented business. So that can't be 1,000 feet within another sweepstake internet cafe or a sexually oriented business.
He wanted to add 7.
Yeah, that was what we had discussed, was the 7. And then going into the sexually oriented business and adding a 7 that lists sweepstake internet cafes and that zoning regulation. And I think that's where it sounds like there is, that might be a little too restrictive, is the concern.
I know I suggested it last time, but seeing that map, it does, basically you're saying one can go, there's only 2 zones, really. One can go here, one can go there, and then that's it. So, and if you got 2 of the same in each zone, then you're eliminating the other one. And I don't know if we can do that.
You have to at least allow one of each.
Do we? I don't know.
Well, we can't outzone it, so.
No, but first come, first served.
I would think that would still be, yeah. I think we'd have to at least one of each. But,
Yeah. If you outzone one, you've outzoned it, is what it comes down to.
yeah.
Is how I would look at it.
If you think of the,
It's up for a court to decide, not for the planner to decide, but that would be my interpretation, would be.
I think we still want to, yeah. I mean, does it, even if you don't list the other one, does it do it to each other, right? Like the having the 1,000 feet? Like, so say if one locates in, look at your map, one locates in that manufacturing district off of East State Street.
You could put 2 there, one on each end.
Yeah.
You could put one, I thought, actually,
Yeah, it seems like that'd be fine. So you could probably restrict it from being next to another one of the same type.
zone it out.
Right.
Maybe on the west side of town, maybe more time.
I'm confused.
Well, we're talking, do we even keep that it can't be located any parcel within 1,000 feet of another sweepstakes cafe?
This is your proposed item 7.
No, well, this is what's in what currently is 6.
7 would be for sexually oriented businesses, to add that to the mix.
Which is...
It seems like it can see either a sweepstakes or a sexually oriented business, whoever can get it first, and
I would like to at least maintain the 1,000.
for the sweepstake, of itself.
You're talking about item 6 there?
Right,
Yeah.
because what that would do is...
That's exactly how we have it for sexually
Right.
oriented businesses.
It prevents a
1,000 feet
district.
from any other sexually oriented business, right? Yeah.
So they wouldn't be adjacent to each other. So in other words, if you look at the map and a sweepstakes cafe were to go into that manufacturing, they would still allow a sexually oriented business to go in that manufacturing. But once both are in there, it's probably going to be highly unlikely for another one of either of those types to enter into that area.
Into that area, but they could in the
But
other.
they could, and what I'm getting to is you could probably still have another, and so. At minimum, 2 are allowed by this sort of,
Well, at least 2. I mean, essentially, if you look
Right.
at that swath of manufacturing on East State Street, you probably, and if I look at the scale, which says half a mile.
I can't tell the colors anyway.
well, the 1,000, our little 1,000 feet circle there is
Yeah.
going to allow at least 2 in that
And
one
that's,
spot.
yeah.
That's why I thought the
2 of each.
1,500 was,
Would-
be the preference.
That's where I'm kind of leaning to as well, is to go to the 1,500, but no longer add an item 7. So try to amend the sweepstakes, or have it 1,500 in the sweepstakes regulation and amend the sexually oriented business to 1,500 feet.
Oh, see, that's where I had problems to begin with.
I don't, but it still would allow, I mean, if you look at,
Whatever you guys want.
I get, what we're trying to do is to prevent, or what it sounds like RJ and I are trying to do, is trying to prevent two going into the same area.
But as it stands now, you have a 1,000-foot limitation, right? Okay, so therefore, they have to be 1,000 feet apart. If you look at this map for the 1,000-foot requirements, in theory, you could probably fit 3 on East State Street. Is that what I'm looking at the very
And
minute?
it seems like, yeah, if you were to locate here,
Yeah.
It also requires, there's a parking requirement.
Within the 1,000 feet restriction.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, that's probably about right.
You take the circle and move it over along the way
Right.
there.
That's what I'm saying.
It's barely, you could barely fit that in there.
Right.
You still have parking requirements which would limit it
still have
further.
to not be in the river.
Yeah. So,
You have to find a vacant store.
Right.
You have to find a vacant place to open it, and a landlord is willing to lease it.
Whoever boat gamblers could be in the river.
You still have property for sale there, too.
Oh, that's,
well, as you have it crafted here, I have no problem with the 1,000-foot, the bullets as you have, but it's I'm just one member of the mix here.
well, I will say 1,000's been approved by city council for the when it came to sexual oriented business. We aren't having to suggest something they've already passed. How about we change the distance on here? So, I mean, I think this, as is written right now, stands a very good chance of getting approved by city council. So, I definitely like that aspect of it.
Could I ask 2 informational questions here on, let's see, I think revocation, 11-10-06, revocation B. What do you think the city administration would be looking at as far as who's enforcing this, the police or code enforcement?
Are you looking at the business?
It gives them
Yeah,
both, but I was just kind of
business
curious what domain that would probably fall under, and
I was wondering the same thing. I used, I had questions on that, whether it would be auditor, service safety director, or code director, or attorney even.
And in the wording of this, do you want to leave it flexible as opposed to limiting and saying, well, this agency is handling it, and then,
What I wanted to do with the business code, because I'm not an expert with it, this is a model that I'd seen in other cities. Leave it up to Athens City Council to figure out how they want to handle business code.
Absolutely.
I'm not an expert on it. But it would seem to me probably the service safety director.
I think you leave it open because it could be a police matter, it could be an auditor matter, it could be us, it could be any one of them. So depending on what the violation is.
yeah, I was just curious who the initial agency would be, that's all.
But it depends on who.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing is on 11-10-08, prohibited conduct. When you say, use words like indecent, immoral, profane, are those legally defensible words, or would it be better to say sexually oriented, or,
I don't
which is
know.
where I think we're going with that?
I do not know. What I do know is that this exact
Lang?
business code has been adopted by other cities in the state of Ohio. I would assume it's legally defensible, but again, when it comes to business code, it's not my realm of expertise. What I saw when other communities were addressing internet cafes, they were approaching it both from a business code and from zoning code.
Right.
And so that's the recommendations I stuck with.
But would A be better at just saying, permit any sexually oriented activity?
I think this speaks greater than that.
Okay.
Yeah, because this is going for the sweepstakes one and not just the sexually oriented. Well, there is a item in the business code for sexually oriented.
Yeah.
Was added, so.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Right, that's already
So if they
there.
start doing that, then they're falling underneath the other section,
Right.
and that would be a violation of the stuff we just
Right.
talked about before, so.
Well, because I thought we were talking to in terms of like somebody not partnering the internet cafe with, something like a club or something of that nature,
They could.
of sexual nature.
like, from what we're saying, if they're not going to have the separation, they could. And that's, I think, where we're heading, if that's okay.
If I look at these age through G, we go all the way in, hold on a second. If I look at most of these would apply to any business.
That's what, yeah.
I mean, basically, would you want Ruby Tuesdays to permit any indecent, immoral, profane language, indecent, immoral, disorderly conduct upon premises?
Well, is that, I mean, do you even need that? I mean, isn't that already sort of implied by criminal code and not just the business code?
I don't know.
No, but if you have like a court system that basically can't decide often what is considered obscene, then I don't know how you get into, again, indecent, what is,
Yeah.
reasonable people understand what indecent suggests, but, if someone's getting into legalese, I just didn't know, I'm just asking, just...
Again, it would apply to any restaurant as well, I mean, from my point of view.
And yeah, this is just specifically to a sweepstakes internet cafe, we keep that in mind as well. So profane language may be, we may allow that in some of our performing venues or something like that.
Especially when they
Not-
lose or something.
Yeah, exactly. So they're going to have to close your license, your customers, or language is
Well, again, prevent
rejected.
intoxication, possession of alcohol beverages, bars have that, restaurants have that.
Right.
What we're trying to do is prevent the,
Yeah.
colloquialization of alcohol and gambling or
Good use.
sweepstakes.
That might cover it, John.
What's that?
This prohibited conduct of use of alcoholic beverages.
Having the two together,
Yes.
those other uses won't have alcohol either, it's against the law.
Again, it comes down to permit.
I think, I've never said I've been in one of those places.
Because I thought we were trying to separate
Clarify
or
that.
keep the two from partnering in terms of...
I take the question you're asking, though, a lot of these are police issues, and I know in our code clarifies, and the police department could speak more to that as to what you can do by way of profanity and all the other things. I think, I agree with Paul that this is kind of just it's been adopted in other towns, and I think our own code already addresses a lot of these issues through the police and what they can and cannot do, so I wouldn't really put a whole lot into it and just kind of use this as a
No,
guideline.
profane language is a freedom of expression issue too, though.
That's a strange one, I'll admit that, but
I would, just to point out, the planning commission only can make recommendations on
Absolutely.
chapter 23 zoning code, not, I don't believe,
Right, this is a business.
the business code, so we can discuss that all the time, but I don't think city council has to.
all right, so
deal
let's
with planning
remove the
commission
business
business.
code one from discussion.
Question, if, again, we do Title 23, council does 11, and in theory, we're meddling when we load into the business code. I see there is a 1,000 feet requirement there, and what is it, 111004? We're reading that correctly?
We should just point to
Location.
zoning.
Suppose they decide to change that number, they would have to have a supermajority to change the 23 section as well? Could we actually end up with a disconnect? One says 1,000, one says 1,500?
It's a function of zoning. I believe the zoning code, at the beginning of the
Supersedes.
zoning code, it says it supersedes any other part of code,
Okay.
so if zoning says 1,000, then 1,000's,
We end up with...
you know.
Actually, it looks pretty good. I think you did a lot of good work there, Paul.
And C does call out the service safety director for revocation. So, there you are, Paul.
More work.
One item that is in conflict, I did see, again, I'm not trying to bring up the business code one, but it included liquor permitting place in the business code, that couldn't be by, it had to do, I think, sort of with the non-conforming uses, but it wasn't listed, we're not,
Where is that?
it is in 11-1004 location. Item B. This has to do with if there is a sweepstakes already present, and a school or public library, public playground, or any establishment that has been issued a liquor permit by the state of Ohio moves within 1,000 feet of said sweepstakes cafe, that, you know.
That would probably need to be taken out.
Yeah, because I can imagine what that buffer looks like.
Right.
That's all. But again, I understood that this, you were just giving this as a...
Well, I didn't mean to...
and it's...
Those are important things to, I would never have caught that, and
Okay.
that could be a complication. I didn't mean to say we can't discuss the business code, but that's not...
No, I understood. I think you were giving this more as a frame of reference than rather something we had too much purvey.
I think that intention probably came from a carryout being next door to one of these where you can buy your own and then take it in.
Oh, I see, right.
You know, obviously, this, you wouldn't want to say it the way it's said there, you know, if it's 500 feet from Ruby Tuesdays or something like
Right.
that. But to a carryout, I don't know, I know that's, I got a feeling that's probably what that was intended to say.
Or the model I was looking at had it in their zoning code that it had to be 1,000 feet from a liquor
And that's probably
permit,
where that
and
came
if we
from.
do that in Athens, you're not going to be able to have them. Right? More or less. We could look at that, though.
Finish that part.
That would rule out all, that entire part of East State Street, so we would be getting into very minute pieces of land.
Yeah.
Did we ever end up with a GIS layer of liquor zones? We never, that's never really...
We had, Ron Lucas did one years ago, probably before a few of those restaurants came onto East State Street, before the widening project. But we can update that. If you'd like to see that, I can do that.
No, it was just a, you know, when we had this discussion, it just, as you say, I don't know what, let's see, Kroger's, Ruby Tuesdays, Abrio's,
Leghorn.
Leghorns,
Maple
Grand
Wood.
Ranchero.
okay, so pretty much we've got one almost every 1,000 feet there.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I was trying to visualize, what it looks like.
Applebee's.
Pizza Hut.
Applebee's has a liquor license?
Yeah, that's still beer and wine.
Pizza Hut sells beer.
What?
Pizza Hut
Pizza
sells
Hut.
beer.
Yeah.
Pizza Hut sells beer. Yeah, so pretty much if we said 1,000 feet of any liquor establishment, we got most of that.
Yeah.
Except for Holzer Clinic maybe or something.
A few people in Athens who don't live within 1,000 feet of a liquor establishment.
I guess that could be a tourist point, right? Scary.
All right, are there any more questions or comments on the, what we call the Internet Cafe sweepstake zoning change?
Okay, so if I'm reading the take-home message I'm hearing for this, right, pretty much is that this is mostly pretty much done. We're talking about 1,000 feet.
Right.
We're talking about eliminating that section from 1004, B, about the 1,000 foot from any liquor establishment.
Making the suggestion.
For the suggestion.
I'm gonna pull that out and make that same suggestion
Okay.
to council as well. I think that it's a clear area there.
Okay, we did have questions who enforces, but that's really later down the line, I think. Leave that open.
Not our,
And-
Well, it says the service safety director or his or her designee from law enforcement shall meet with the complainant and inquire at all as to specific reasons for complaints, and that's irrevocable, or in the revocation area, so.
Well, the reality is, and I think it states somewhere there, it's really you responding. so.
well, yeah, what I was leading to is making the suggestion that there be a motion, that if there's no further discussion, that we table this then for when we schedule our public hearing as the item for that, and before taking a vote from the
Is the 7
members.
going to be in or out on this?
My motion would be as is.
As is, except shouldn't hold over to modify that.
That's a business.
Okay, zoning,
Yeah.
got it.
Zoning as is, without making the item 7 change that we had earlier discussed, or the change to the distance requirement of item A.
Okay, so you want to table until we schedule a public hearing?
Yes.
Okay, so we don't move on until this public hearing.
Right. That
We
would
do
be-
want to schedule a public hearing.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
And with that public hearing, that's where I wanted to actually schedule it with the sign ordinance one.
So it's
So-
an evening.
Yeah. But I don't think we're ready for that.
I like night meetings. I have one tonight, so.
I'd be concerned about loading the public meeting up too much, because I think just, in terms of how long we talk about one item, if you're adding...
We're not going to talk at a public hearing.
Well, but what I'm getting at though is, there's the five of us, if there's 10 or 20 people who are going to be offering, if we want to, I mean, both of those are pretty controversial items. I don't know if we want to...
Do you think this one is?
I can't imagine.
Not as much now. But, whatever you want to do is fine.
We communicate, I guess we can group it with the communication towers if that comes online quickly. We can, I just wouldn't want to have, a series of public meetings. It'd be nice if we could sort of group some of these.
meeting every 2 weeks, what do you mean?
Well, a public hearing, I apologize, thank you for correcting me.
You could
Yeah.
probably do public hearing for internet cafes from a level of controversy or even
Yeah, you
interest.
probably
I don't
can.
think there's much. We could probably do that at the next planning commission at noon.
Okay,
The
that's not a
signs,
bad
it-
suggestion, yeah.
The signs might be one you want to make sure you've got some public input
And I
on,
could
but-
see even a telecommunication tower having a lot of people
Yeah.
bring input, even if...
That was very heated at council
Right.
a year and a half, 2 years
Even if the
ago.
regulation itself is not very controversial, it's the subject so much that...
Yeah.
And do you want to have a meeting yourselves on the signage before it goes to public?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think we need to at least put forward what is really sort of up for discussion, a little bit clearer, since it's been a little bit since we've reviewed it, so... Okay, that's a good suggestion, Paul, I'd take that, so let's have a public hearing if we can. I don't think we have enough time, it'd have to be 2 meetings from this next one, right?
I think it needs 14 days' notice, and we've got 5 Wednesdays this month, so our next
Okay.
meeting's not for 3 weeks. from
Okay, so
today.
then, yeah,
April 6th.
okay.
Yeah.
Everyone planning to be here April 6th?
So you made a motion to have a public hearing, and that's,
I have made a motion.
I'll second that.
All those in favor? Any opposition to the public hearing? There should never be any opposition to public hearings.
Could if you're going to do this, one of the suggestions would be put it online so people can get a
Yeah.
gander at this when you
Definitely.
modify the appropriate portion?
I can put all that up there.
Okay. Both the title 23 and 11.
I can put the maps up and all that, too.
Sounds good then.
Okay. We will discuss the agenda, packaging the next agenda, I guess, over email, and people will see what is on that agenda when it is announced prior to the meeting. We'll move forward out of communications unless anyone has any other item to add, to our reports from our city planner and director of development code enforcement. Do I stay facility still, or do you want to drop that from your...
Change the F and make it an L. Litter.
Do you want to go first, because I know you're supposed to be somewhere else?
I have nothing to add because, and that's, I have been in training all this week for structural collapse training through search and rescue that we are doing with the fire department and Andy Stone and myself for Stimson Avenue right now. Learning a lot, very educational, and hence the reason for hat hair and jeans and being really tired right now.
Well, I appreciate you taking time out of your training to attend the meeting today.
Thank you.
Paul, leaves it to you if you have any other items.
I don't really have much. We did receive, the census data came out last week for the state of Ohio. Athens grew by about 1,500 people, 1,600 people. We had our official count, I'm going off memory, but I believe it was 23,682. The 2010, or the 2000 census might have actually only been about 22,000, so, or 21,500. So we went up by a little bit. Probably it's just more accurate enumeration of our dormitories as opposed to an actual increase in population, would be my guess. But I haven't done any data analysis with it. We will be using that data this year to double check our city council wards to make sure that population is more or less equally distributed among them. That's something we have to do every 10 years when the census data comes out, just like they redistrict all of the state house and state senate seats and our U.S. representatives too, so.
That data, you said that's preliminary, or is that, do we actually have census blocks yet, or no?
And it's down to the block, that is the official data.
Okay.
Yeah, and it has, at this point, it's the head count, the households, the race, age, those types of demographics are all broken down in it. So, but it goes down to the census block.
Is that coming out on a website? I think you said you're going to send, I think you sent it to me, maybe.
It's on the census website, I can send a link to that. It's not, it takes a long time to figure out how to negotiate the census site, I will say that.
Okay.
It's a skill in itself.
The only reason why I was asking is I was at a solid waste district meeting Monday, and they're waiting for the census data too. I don't think they're aware that it's already out. I told them a little bit that we have some preliminary numbers, but I wasn't sure to what degree.
It's out.
Okay.
Yeah.
They have to generate numbers in terms of accessibility to recycling facilities, and therefore new numbers would reflect a new amount of accessibility they have to put out there for the recycling. That's why I was asking.
I don't know if they put the data out in the GIS world. The census data is put together in a program called Tiger 2, I think.
Okay.
I don't know if they've put it into Tiger 2 yet, or if it's just databases that you can look at on the census website. I haven't checked it that deep yet.
Okay, just wondered.
Anything else?
Oh, that's it.
Well, okay, you're working with the Arts, Parks, and Recreation, right?
Yeah, we'll be working with them. I did have a second meeting with the Arts, Parks, and Rec Board last week to try to further clarify whether they're interested in beginning the process of doing an Arts, Parks, and Rec master plan. I'll meet with Rich Campitelli tomorrow, the director, to talk a little bit more about that, but I got the indication that the board is interested in working on that. They last did a strategic plan back in 2006, I believe, and it's expected to be updated this year, but they thought maybe they'd want to do a little bit more than just a strategic plan.
Okay.
So,
And one of the other issues was, I forgot, so I guess it's not that important. Okay.
Armory, we had that meeting last week. I'm going to get with George Entwiston from Lands and Buildings to try to get a little bit more detail on what it will take just to get the building secured a little bit better as far as from the elements. And then Chris Fall would like to have an ad hoc committee created to look into some of the conversation we had last week in more detail and funding sources.
And the Comprehensive Plan Review Advisory Commission's discussion is to morph into some change direction or so, or?
Still not sure on that, but that's possibly just not meeting on a monthly basis and meeting more on a as-needed basis, since we're dealing with trying to create benchmarks and report on something that's too old and we're too slow to get into that. But,
Okay.
yeah.
Any questions? Thank you, Paul. Moving on to reports and opportunities for citizens to speak. Item. Announcements and other business. Our next meeting is April 6th, so 2 Wednesdays, or I guess the third Wednesday from today. That's at noon, and we'll have the public hearing on the sweepstakes internet cafes. Any other announcements or other items?
No.
Okay. Last meeting's minutes, has everyone had an opportunity to review them?
Yep. I move to accept the minutes.
Satisfied?
I think I did that last time.
That's okay. I'll second that. I'm not sure who seconded, but all those fine with the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
All right. At this point, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Correct Bob's last name.